Close your eyes for a moment and let your thoughts drift across the quiet surface of the night. Imagine the world around you, the stars above, the ground beneath your feet, the subtle rhythm of your own breath. For most of human history, people have trusted these things as real, solid, and unshakable. Yet a question lingers in the hidden corners of philosophy and science. What if everything we know is not reality at all, but a carefully crafted illusion? Picture existence as a vast program running on a machine beyond comprehension, where every law of physics is written like a line of code, and every moment of your life unfolds within a grand design set by an unseen hand. Ancient myths spoke of veils that conceal the true world, and modern thinkers have suggested that mathematics itself may be the operating system of the universe. Between those echoes lies a haunting possibility that we are living inside a simulation. Tonight, we will follow this thread through history, myth, and science, not to settle the mystery, but to wander in its quiet wonder. Allow the story to unfold slowly, like a dream. Welcome to Historic Sleep. If you're drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the shadows between what we see and what was made to disappear, feel free to like and subscribe only if it feels right. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? I love seeing our little map of watchers light up around the world. There is always a first moment of hesitation, a faint opening in the mind where certainty begins to blur. The idea that reality may not be what it seems has appeared again and again across cultures, yet in modern times it has gained a sharper, almost mathematical form. Standing at that threshold, one might feel as if they are peering at a curtain and wondering what lies behind it. The world feels stable, reliable, governed by laws we trust. But the question that stirs unease is simple. What if those laws are not natural but written? The suspicion is not born from science fiction alone. Even in the ancient world, voices dared to whisper that life might be shadow play. The philosopher Zhuangzi once dreamed of being a butterfly, and upon waking, wondered if he was truly a man who had dreamed of flying, or a butterfly now dreaming of being human. The parable was meant as a meditation on identity, yet its echo feels remarkably close to today's speculation. That perhaps what we call reality is only a dream within a larger mind, or a pattern within a greater system. Centuries later, as empires rose and fell, the same questions resurfaced. Medieval mystics described the visible world as a thin veil, a stage set before the eyes of humanity, while the true essence remained hidden behind divine architecture. The allegory of a painted theater backdrop was meant to emphasize spiritual truth, but when read today, it seems eerily aligned with what some call the simulation theory. That behind the stage, there is machinery, a structure that keeps the illusion alive. In the 20th century, this metaphor grew sharper as human beings built their own artificial worlds. With the invention of digital computers, we began to simulate weather systems, to model the rise and fall of galaxies, to train virtual populations in experimental worlds of mathematics and logic. Each program reminded us that a complete and convincing universe need not be boundless. It only needed rules, written with precision, and a processor powerful enough to carry them forward. For the first time, the suspicion that reality might itself be programmed no longer seemed a poetic exaggeration. It became a hypothesis. Consider the rise of physics in the same century. At first, scientists believed that nature could be reduced to strict determinism, like gears in a clock. But quantum mechanics disrupted that view with its strange requirement of an observer. Particles would remain in states of uncertainty until measured, almost as if reality refused to reveal itself until someone asked for the data. To many, this resembled how a computer game might render a landscape only when the player turns their eyes toward it. The comparison is, of course, metaphorical. Yet metaphors have power, especially when they highlight uncanny resemblances. From here, the doorway widened. If observation is necessary for reality to take shape, could that imply the world behaves like an interactive system, a kind of code that collapses into form only when queried? Mainstream physicists cautioned against taking the analogy too literally, yet outside of strict laboratories, the image spread. Life as an interface and human perception as the command line. At the dawn of the 21st century, philosophers revisited the theme with startling clarity. They asked, if civilizations survive long enough, won't they develop the capacity to run simulations of entire histories, entire universes? If so, then it is not only possible, but probable, that what we experience is itself one of those simulations. The reasoning was framed as a thought experiment, but it carried unsettling implications. For if the probability leans toward countless simulations and only one original reality, then statistically we are far more likely to inhabit a copy. The unease of that possibility reverberates. It forces us to question the things we take for granted, that our choices are free, that the stars are distant suns, that the earth has an age measured in billions of years. In a simulated framework, these might be no more than programmed parameters, fine-tuned for internal coherence, but ultimately arbitrary. The speed of light could be a line of code, gravity, a subroutine, the persistence of memory, a buffer maintained by design. Some might dismiss such thoughts as fanciful. Yet history reminds us that many once dismissed ideas later proved fundamental. The notion that the Earth orbits the Sun was once heresy. The existence of invisible microbes was unthinkable before microscopes revealed them. In each case, the familiar world was shattered by a new perspective. The simulation theory fits this tradition of disruptive ideas. It has not been proven, but it unsettles us because it extends a pattern we know. Again and again, the universe has been stranger than we assumed. Even in literature, echoes abound. From the mirrors of Jorge Luis Borges to the infinite libraries of imagined books, storytellers have long played with the suspicion that worlds can be layered, nested, and artificial. The computer age has only provided fresh metaphors, screens, codes, programs that dress an ancient fear in modern clothing. Whether sung by poets, whispered by monks, or calculated by mathematicians, the suspicion is the same. What if this is not the ultimate layer? As night deepens, the thought grows heavier. To entertain the simulation theory is to loosen one's grip on the solid world. It does not deny the experience of touch, taste, or pain, but it repositions them as one might reposition pieces on a chessboard. The rules still apply within the game, but the game itself is bounded, designed, and perhaps overseen by players we cannot see. To step through that doorway of doubt is not to abandon reality, but to realize it may be framed. This first step, though unsettling, is not entirely hopeless. If reality is a simulation, then it is also a work of extraordinary beauty, crafted with an artistry that allows galaxies to spin, oceans to roar, and consciousness to awaken. To wonder about its nature is not to diminish it, but to marvel at its design. The suspicion remains, delicate but unshakable, like a whisper carried across centuries. Perhaps the stage is painted, perhaps the walls are woven of code, and perhaps behind them lies a truth we have yet to face. When human beings first began to doubt the firmness of the world around them, they turned not to machines, but to shadows and stories. Long before the rise of science, philosophers crafted allegories that questioned whether reality could be trusted at all. These stories survive not as dusty arguments, but as living images, lanterns that still illuminate the mystery of our existence. In the caves of ancient Greece, Plato offered one of the most enduring metaphors, the allegory of the cave. He asked his listeners to imagine prisoners chained in darkness, facing only a wall where flickering shadows were cast by fires behind them. To these prisoners, the shadows were reality, the only world they knew. But if one prisoner escaped and turned toward the light, he would see the true objects, and beyond them, the blazing sun. For Plato, the cave represented ignorance, and the sunlight symbolized the higher truth of philosophy. Yet within the folds of that parable, modern ears hear something else. The suggestion that what we take as reality might itself be projection, a simulation of sorts, concealing the deeper structure of existence. Centuries later, another philosopher extended this suspicion in his own way. René Descartes, meditating in solitude, wondered if everything he perceived could be the trick of a deceiving force. He imagined the possibility of a malicious demon, powerful enough to weave an illusion of the entire world, fooling him into believing that fire burns and snow is white, when perhaps neither existed at all. His solution was to cling to the one certainty he could not doubt: the act of thinking itself. I think, therefore I am, was less a celebration of certainty than a fragile refuge against overwhelming doubt. For those who listen today, the demon seems like a primitive description of what we might call a programmer, feeding carefully arranged experiences into a mind caught within a greater system. Eastern traditions, too, explored similar ideas, though with a different tone. In India, ancient sages spoke of Maya, the grand illusion that veils ultimate reality. The world of forms, sounds, and colors was seen as transient, a shifting dream over the stillness of the eternal. In this vision, truth was not hidden behind firelight or conjured by demons, but woven into the very fabric of daily life, so pervasive that only through discipline and awakening could one see past it. The whisper of simulation theory can be heard here as well. Life as a grand projection, shimmering yet insubstantial, awaiting those willing to pierce the veil. Buddhist thought carried this further, emphasizing the impermanence of all phenomena. To cling to the solidity of the world was to fall into delusion, for everything was conditioned, dependent, and passing. To glimpse this truth was to wake, as if rising from a dream. For a modern listener, this dreamlike quality aligns with the metaphor of code and programming. Transient, conditional, and dependent on hidden frameworks that generate appearances moment by moment. It is striking how many traditions converge on the same suspicion. Whether through Greek philosophy, European skepticism, or Asian metaphysics, the suggestion is constant. What we call reality may not be ultimate. In each case, the teacher urged followers to look beyond the surface, to question, to awaken, to resist the temptation of blind trust. These ancient voices did not speak of computers or data, but they set the stage for such language to make sense centuries later. As history moved forward, the skepticism of philosophers never fully faded. During the Enlightenment, scholars debated whether human senses could ever deliver the world as it truly is. Thinkers like Immanuel Kant argued that we never grasp the world directly, only the filtered version our minds construct. Space, time, and causality might not be properties of reality itself, but categories imposed by the human intellect, rules of the interface rather than the thing in itself. Again, the analogy to simulation theory arises. Perhaps our minds are operating within a framework not of our own making, receiving structured inputs, constrained to perceive through filters installed long before we arrived. If this view is correct, then even our most trusted sciences are like maps drawn from within the cave. They describe the patterns we see, but cannot tell us whether the walls are stone or simulation. The constancy of physical laws may reassure us, but constancy itself is no guarantee of truth. After all, a game designed with perfect physics feels convincing to the player, even if behind the scenes its laws are only lines of code. Critics of simulation. Theory sometimes dismiss it as a modern restatement of old skepticism, but that dismissal may miss the point. Rather than weakening the idea, the echoes of Plato, Descartes, and the Eastern sages show its resilience. Generation after generation, human beings have sensed that appearances cannot be trusted absolutely. The arrival of digital metaphors does not replace their insights, it updates them, placing the same unease into a language suited to our age. Still, one must ask, why does this suspicion persist? Perhaps it is because we live in layers of representation. We read histories written long after events occurred, trusting that words preserve reality. We watch performances, paintings, and films, each of which constructs a world within boundaries of art. We dream nightly, inhabiting scenes that feel real until the moment we wake. In each case, reality is mediated, refracted, assembled. It is little wonder that philosophers suspect even waking life may be one more layer. And so, in the dim light of reflection, one realizes that simulation theory is not as new as it seems. It is a continuation of an ancient lineage of doubt, one that stretches from shadowy caves to modern physics labs. The names change, the metaphors shift, but the anxiety remains. Are we prisoners of illusion, players in a carefully arranged theater, or beings dreaming within a dream? This question does not demand immediate resolution. Rather, it lingers, soft and unsettling, like a low note held beneath the melody of existence. To reflect on it is not to abandon the world, but to see it differently, to glimpse the faint outlines of something beyond. And in that moment, standing between darkness and light, we sense that the cave, the demon, the veil, and the dream might all be pointing toward the same hidden truth. The 20th century brought with it a quiet but decisive shift. For thousands of years, doubts about reality had lingered in the realm of parable and philosophy, whispered in allegories of shadows, demons, or veils. But as circuits lit up and machines began to hum, those ancient questions acquired a new and startling vocabulary. For the first time, humanity could build small, artificial worlds of its own, worlds where rules were not discovered, but written. The birth of the digital computer marked this turning point. At first, these devices were little more than calculating engines, colossal machines that filled entire rooms yet performed tasks that today would fit within a wristwatch. But their potential was soon realized. They were not only calculators but model makers. A program could simulate a weather system, predicting storms before clouds gathered. It could map the orbit of planets, tracing invisible gravitational pulls. It could generate imaginary environments, complete with agents that followed preset rules. In each case, the machine did not simply crunch numbers. It built a miniature universe, governed entirely by code. To scientists, this was revolutionary. For the first time, the laws of nature could be mirrored in symbolic form, tested and replayed within silicon circuits. A storm that would last hours in reality could be sped through in seconds. A galaxy's birth and collapse could be compressed into neat equations, observed at the click of a button. The idea that the universe itself might be such a simulation began as metaphor, but with each new program, the metaphor sharpened into something more concrete. Think of John von Neumann, whose work on cellular automata showed that simple rules could produce astonishing complexity. A grid of cells, each following the same minimal instructions, could give rise to patterns that moved, multiplied, and interacted almost as if alive. Observers called it the game of life, yet the implications were anything but playful. If lifelike structures could emerge from simple code in a two-dimensional grid, why not consciousness from deeper algorithms in a richer system? The possibility loomed. The complexity of our own universe might be the emergent property of rules running on some unimaginable cosmic processor. Meanwhile, physics itself seemed to edge toward digital metaphors. When researchers discovered that energy levels in atoms appeared quantized, stepping like discrete units rather than flowing smoothly, it reminded some of pixels on a screen. Just as a digital image is composed of tiny, indivisible squares, the universe appeared to be composed of indivisible packets. If light and matter were quantized, perhaps space and time themselves were as well, broken into the smallest possible increments. To those who embraced simulation theory, this was evidence of a finite resolution, the grain of the cosmic display. Others pointed to the role of mathematics as the universe's strange and perfect language. Why should equations written on paper describe the behavior of galaxies and particles with such precision? It was as if the cosmos itself were built upon mathematical architecture, with numbers serving as the operating system of reality. If so, then the programmer of this grand simulation had written in mathematics, encoding existence in symbols that humans only gradually learned to read. Outside the laboratory, the growing reach of computers made the metaphor impossible to ignore. By the late 20th century, video games began to show landscapes so immersive that players could wander through forests, cities, and entire worlds that existed only in code. Though primitive by today's standards, they offered a visceral glimpse of how convincing artificial environments could be. As graphics improved, the boundary between real and virtual grew thinner. If humans could build such convincing illusions within decades of digital progress, what might a civilization millions of years ahead be capable of? This leap of imagination shaped not only science fiction, but philosophical debate. Thinkers began to ask, is there any way to prove that we are not inside such a program? If a simulated being were coded with memories, sensations, and emotions, how could it ever distinguish its artificial world from a base reality? The troubling answer was that it could not. A perfect simulation would be indistinguishable from reality to its inhabitants. And if indistinguishable, then what reason had we to assume we were not in one? This idea spread quickly in the early 21st century, amplified by advances in virtual reality. As headsets and haptic devices allowed people to step into fabricated environments, the difference between simulation and experience blurred further. A digital landscape could trick the senses, evoking awe, fear, or even vertigo as effectively as physical places. Each new step forward in technology deepened the suspicion that reality itself might be an infinitely advanced version of the same trick. Even experiments in artificial intelligence hinted at the possibility. Machines could now generate text, compose music, and design images, outputs once thought uniquely human. If code could create expressions that felt alive, why could code not also create consciousness itself? The thought was unsettling, that our minds might not be exceptions to programming, but examples of it. Neurons firing in the brain could be seen as biological algorithms, no different in principle from electrical ones. Yet this did not mean simulation theory was universally accepted. Critics argued that analogies to computers were just that, analogies. To say the world looks like code does not mean it is code, but the persistence of the comparison remained telling. Human beings build metaphors from their own creations. In the age of clocks, the universe was imagined as a clockwork mechanism. In the age of steam, it was seen as an engine. Now, in the age of computers, it is tempting to see reality as software. Whether true or not, the metaphor reflects the spirit of its time. Still, the suspicion carried weight. Every time a simulation grew more detailed, every time a game became more convincing, the line between reality and illusion grew thinner. If we can create universes within machines, then perhaps our own universe is a machine's creation. What was once only a philosophical riddle has become a scientific hypothesis, debated not only in literature, but in academic halls. Thus, the age of computing did not answer the ancient doubts. It amplified them. Where once philosophers imagined shadows or demons, we now speak of processors and code. The imagery is modern, yet the anxiety is timeless. Standing in the glow of our screens, we glimpse the possibility that we are screens ourselves, illuminated by patterns written elsewhere. When computers opened the door to digital metaphors, physics itself provided an even deeper set of puzzles. The quantum world, so unlike the certainties of classical mechanics, arrived in the early 20th century like a riddle without a key. It seemed to whisper that reality was not continuous and predictable, but fractured, uncertain, and eerily dependent on observation. For those who ponder the simulation theory, quantum mechanics is less a branch of science and more a crack in the wall of the stage, a faint glimpse of machinery behind the curtain. At its heart lies the principle of uncertainty. When Werner Heisenberg proposed that one cannot simultaneously know both the position and momentum of a particle with perfect precision, the notion shattered the dream of a clockwork universe. It was not merely a limit of measurement, it was a statement about nature itself. The universe refused to yield exact detail, as if its resolution were fundamentally limited. To those imagining a simulation, the parallel is striking. In a digital environment, too, information cannot be infinite. Pixels cannot subdivide forever. There is always a smallest unit, beyond which detail dissolves. The strangeness deepened with the famous double-slit experiment. When particles such as electrons were fired through a pair of slits, they behaved like waves, creating interference patterns on the screen beyond. Yet the moment someone measured which slit the electron passed through, the interference vanished and the particles behaved as though they had chosen a single path. The act of observation itself altered the outcome. To some physicists, this was an unavoidable paradox. To advocates of simulation theory, it looked suspiciously like conditional rendering in a computer game, where scenery is generated only when the player turns their gaze. Reality, in this view, might not calculate itself unless it is being watched. Then came the eerie phenomenon of entanglement. Two particles, once connected, could be separated by vast distances and yet remain mysteriously linked. Change the state of one, and the other responded instantly, faster than any signal should travel. Einstein derided it as spooky action at a distance, but experiments confirmed it again and again. How could two particles exchange information across the universe without delay? Within the metaphor of simulation, one explanation emerges. Distance may not be fundamental at all. Just as two pixels on a screen can be updated simultaneously because they exist within the same underlying code, entangled particles may simply be points in a program updated by a deeper, hidden system. This does not mean physicists have embraced the simulation theory. Most remain cautious, interpreting quantum mechanics through models that require no cosmic programmer. Yet even within mainstream discussions, the language sometimes slips. When researchers speak of information as the ultimate substance of the universe, when they describe black holes as encoding data on their event horizons, when they imagine space-time itself as emergent from quantum entanglement, the metaphors sound increasingly digital. It is as though physics, peering into its deepest layers, cannot avoid describing the world in terms that resemble computation. Consider the Planck scale, the theorized smallest unit of space and time. Below this unimaginably tiny length, our equations break down, and we cannot meaningfully describe what occurs. Space is not infinitely divisible. Time is not a smooth flow. They come in quanta, the smallest possible ticks of reality's clock. Again the suspicion rises. Are these the pixels of the universe? The resolution limit of a grand simulation? If so, then our microscopes have reached the edge of the screen. The allure of this idea has grown stronger in recent decades. Some scientists have proposed experiments to detect signs of a digital structure to space-time. If the universe is a simulation, perhaps it leaves behind artifacts, subtle glitches in cosmic radiation, statistical patterns that reveal an underlying grid. Others have suggested that cosmic rays might betray the limits of a simulated lattice, unable to travel smoothly across the supposed pixels of reality. While none of these tests has yet yielded a decisive answer, the fact that they are proposed at all shows how far the suspicion has crept from philosophy into physics. At the same time, quantum mechanics has influenced the language of popular culture. Films and stories portray the world as malleable code, subject to change when one learns to see through the illusion. The resonance is powerful because it echoes what the equations already suggest, that reality is not solid, but probabilistic, flickering between states like a program awaiting execution. In everyday life, this strangeness is hidden. A table feels firm, a star seems distant, a heartbeat reliable. Yet at the quantum level, everything dissolves into uncertainty and chance, as if the solidity were a carefully managed performance. It is important to pause here, to breathe against the temptation of certainty. Quantum mechanics does not prove that we live in a simulation. What it does is reveal that our intuition about the world is deeply flawed. Things do not behave as they should if reality is solid and absolute. Instead, they behave as though the stage itself is shifting, flexible, contingent. That resemblance to digital processes may be coincidence, or it may be clue. The answer is beyond us for now, but the whisper remains, unsettling and persistent. For those lying awake, it is easy to drift into imagery. One imagines electrons flickering like fireflies, not deciding where to land until someone's gaze demands it. One imagines space-time woven like a mesh of threads, each vibrating with information, each carrying bits of data instead of particles of matter. The dream grows heavier. Perhaps consciousness itself is not outside the system, but part of its rendering engine, the process by which the program brings itself to life. This vision is not intended to frighten, but to intrigue. It places us within a story larger than ourselves, a mystery that spans philosophy, science, and imagination. Whether we call it Maya, the cave, the demon, or quantum mechanics, the suspicion endures. What we see may not be the whole truth. And in that endurance lies both unease and wonder. For even if the world is code, it is a code of extraordinary beauty, one capable of weaving galaxies, dreams, and questions into the same vast fabric. Thus, the quantum revolution did not close the book on reality. It opened a new chapter. It did not solve the riddle. It sharpened it. The particles still dance in uncertainty, entangled across the void, refusing to be pinned down. And with each experiment, humanity feels as though it is brushing against the edge of something hidden, like fingertips against the thin veil of a stage set. The whisper grows louder. Perhaps reality is not what it seems. If the possibility of a simulated world troubles us, it also raises a further haunting question. Who could have built it? To imagine our lives unfolding inside an immense program requires not only code, but a programmer. Here, speculation turns outward, toward civilizations beyond our own. Could the architects of this reality be beings far older, far more advanced than humankind? The suggestion may sound fantastic, yet history is filled with myths and traces that keep the possibility alive. In the ruins of Mesopotamia, among tablets pressed with cuneiform, there are stories of gods who descended from the heavens to fashion order from chaos. They were said to shape humanity, to grant knowledge, and to weave destinies with tools beyond mortal reach. To ancient people, these were divine acts. To modern ears, they resemble the work of engineers. Whether as a metaphor or memory, the image is clear. A world deliberately structured, rules set in place, boundaries drawn. It is not far from the thought of a simulation created by a civilization so advanced that its technology appears to us as magic. Egypt offers another echo. The pyramids, aligned with precision to the stars, have long inspired wonder. Mainstream archaeology explains them as the achievements of determined societies, guided by mathematics and labor. Yet alternative theories linger. That knowledge beyond the reach of ordinary mortals played a role. Knowledge that seems strangely akin to coding the laws of a system. Whether these monuments were built by human hands alone or with guidance lost to time, they stand as symbols of intelligence applied to the structure of reality. If advanced civilizations once existed on Earth, perhaps long before the records we now keep, their disappearance does not erase the possibility of their influence. The geologic record tells us that ice ages swept away entire landscapes, drowning coastlines and burying cities beneath rising seas. What traces might have been lost? Some researchers point to sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, with its megaliths erected more than 11,000 years ago, millennia before Stonehenge. Its sophistication forces us to reconsider the timeline of human development. If civilizations advanced earlier than we believed, might they have reached levels of knowledge we cannot yet fathom? Extending the speculation further, some ask whether civilizations beyond Earth might be the architects. The universe, as we measure it, is billions of years old. Stars lived and died long before the sun ignited. If intelligence arose elsewhere, it could have matured for millions, even billions, of years longer than humanity has existed. What powers might such beings command? For them, creating a simulated universe may be no more difficult than rendering a program is for us. We look into the sky and see light from distant galaxies. But if simulation theory holds, those galaxies may be elaborate projections, coded for coherence, their true substance residing only in the processor that sustains them. This perspective finds resonance in cultural myths. In the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Maya, humanity was described as having been created in successive versions. The gods attempted to fashion humans from mud, then from wood, before finally shaping them from maize. Each earlier version failed, collapsing into weakness or lifelessness. The imagery is rich, symbolic, but it also resembles the testing of prototypes, iterations of design until one version succeeded. The echoes are uncanny. Trial, error, refinement, the language of development, whether in myth or in code. Skeptics rightly caution that myths are not blueprints. They are stories carried across generations, shaped by the needs of memory and belief. Yet the persistence of these motifs, the idea of worlds built, destroyed, and rebuilt, feeds into the simulation theory with strange vigor. Whether symbolic or literal, the stories keep alive the notion that we live in a world assembled, not accidental. There is also the question of motive. Why would a civilization, ancient or extraterrestrial, choose to build a simulation like ours? Some propose curiosity, the desire to see how societies evolve, how choices unfold, how paths diverge. Others suggest entertainment, the same impulse that drives humans to create novels, films, or games. Perhaps we are not an experiment, but a story meant to be watched. A darker thought imagines control, that our simulation is a cage designed to limit us, to prevent us from glimpsing truths beyond our programmed horizon. History provides examples of such controlled illusions. The Roman Empire staged elaborate games in its arenas, spectacles designed to absorb the masses while power moved unseen. Medieval courts filled halls with pageantry and theater, blurring the line between reality and performance. These were not cosmic simulations, but they reveal the human instinct to craft environments that shape perception. If humanity has always built illusions, perhaps older civilizations, with greater power, have built the grandest one of all. Some scientists point to the Fermi paradox, the question of why, in a universe so vast, we find no trace of advanced civilizations. One answer may be silence, another, extinction. But a third possibility is that we do not find them because we are inside their creation. A character within a novel cannot step outside the page to find the author. So too, we, within the simulation, cannot see its architects. Their absence in our sky may be the strongest evidence of their presence in our code. This line of thought is not meant to conclude, but to open. It suggests that civilizations, whether earthly or alien, may have grown far beyond us, and that their fingerprints might be the very laws of physics we study. Perhaps what we call constants, gravity, light speed, quantum probabilities, are their choices, encoded into the program for reasons we cannot guess. The architects remain invisible, but their work surrounds us, woven into every sunrise and heartbeat. To reflect on this is to feel both small and immense. Small, because we may be creations within a vast experiment. Immense, because we are conscious of it, capable of asking the question. A simulation that allows its inhabitants to suspect it is a remarkable creation indeed. It is here, in the tension between humility and wonder, that we find the true power of the theory. And so, when the night stretches long, and the stars shine like scattered sparks, one cannot help but wonder. Are they distant suns, or lines of code rendered across a dark screen? Did civilizations before us or beyond us design the stage we now walk upon? The question has no answer yet, but it lingers, soft and unshakable, like a note held in the silence after music fades. When confronted with mysteries too vast for proof, philosophers often turn to the language of probability. In the absence of certainty, likelihood becomes a torch to light the path ahead. Simulation theory has its own such torch, and for many it is the most unsettling of all. The suggestion that, given enough time and technology, it is far more probable we are living in a simulation than in a base reality. The argument unfolds with deceptive simplicity. Imagine that civilizations, if they endure long enough, eventually reach a level of sophistication where they can create simulated worlds as convincing as their own. These simulations would not be small experiments, but entire universes populated with conscious beings who never suspect their artificial origins. If this is possible, then one of two things must be true. Either civilizations inevitably collapse before reaching such capability, or they do reach it and then create countless simulations. If the first option is correct, then perhaps humanity and all civilizations are fragile, doomed to fall before ever building such wonders. But if the second option holds, and many believe it must, then the implications are staggering. For every base reality, there could exist millions, perhaps billions of simulations stacked upon it. In such a universe, the chance of finding oneself in the original world would be vanishingly small, while the chance of existing within a simulation would be overwhelmingly high. The philosopher Nick Bostrom crystallized this reasoning in the early 21st century. His thought experiment posed a trilemma. Either civilizations never reach the ability to run simulations, or they reach it but choose not to, or they reach it and run vast numbers of them. If the third option is true, then statistically, most conscious beings, ourselves included, are living inside a simulation. The reasoning is not mystical nor dependent on ancient myths. It is cold probability, drawn from the logic of numbers. For many, this argument is more disquieting than any metaphor. It suggests that even without direct evidence, the odds are stacked against the assumption of base reality. It does not matter that we feel real, that we see the sun rise or taste the salt of the sea. What matters is the distribution of possibilities, one base reality against countless simulations. Probability tilts toward illusion. History, too, provides parallels. When astronomers first realized Earth was one planet among many, humanity's place in the cosmos shrank. Later, when telescopes revealed billions of galaxies, our uniqueness diminished further. Each time we thought ourselves central, discovery showed we were one among countless. The simulation argument follows the same pattern. To assume we are the one real world among billions of simulated ones is to assume a privileged position, a cosmic exceptionalism. But the lesson of history is that we are rarely as special as we imagine. Still, probability is not destiny. Critics remind us that the argument relies on assumptions, that civilizations can survive technological adolescence, that they will desire to run simulations, that consciousness can be generated artificially. Each assumption may falter. Perhaps advanced beings lose interest in simulations. Perhaps the ethical dilemma of creating entire conscious worlds deters them. Perhaps consciousness itself resists programming, remaining tied to biological matter. If any of these barriers hold, then the probability tilts back toward reality. Yet the counter-arguments, while reasonable, do not erase the unsettling symmetry of the idea. Humans themselves already create simulations on smaller scales, weather models, evolutionary algorithms, virtual societies in games. Each step forward is a proof of concept. What was once myth, worlds within worlds, is now daily practice, however humble. If we do it, why would greater beings not do the same, and on a grander scale? The probability argument also raises questions of purpose. If we are simulated, then why were we made? Was it to study the development of societies, to replay histories, to test outcomes? Some compare it to ancient divination rituals, where humans cast lots or read omens to glimpse possible futures. Perhaps advanced civilizations run simulations for the same reason, to see how events unfold, to find patterns in chaos. Our wars, our art, our science may all be data in an experiment. Others see a more playful motive. Just as humans build games not only for study but for entertainment, perhaps simulations are forms of cosmic storytelling. If so, then our lives may be performances watched by unseen eyes, unfolding for reasons we cannot fathom. The thought is at once humbling and eerie, that every love, every sorrow, every triumph may be part of a script in someone else's theater. And yet, probability does not rob meaning. If we live in a simulation, our experiences are still real to us. Pain still hurts, joy still uplifts, beauty still inspires. The sunrise may be coded, but it still warms the heart. The probability argument unsettles our sense of foundation, but it need not drain our sense of wonder. Indeed, it may amplify it. To exist at all, even as part of a simulation, is extraordinary. As night deepens, one can imagine probabilities drifting like constellations overhead. Each star is a possibility, a potential world, a simulation among simulations. Somewhere beyond them may lie a base reality, rare and unreachable. But here we are, conscious, reflective, able to trace the numbers and ask the questions. That, too, is remarkable, and so the argument rests not as proof, but as persuasion. It does not demand belief, but invites contemplation. The numbers lean toward illusion. yet the mystery remains intact. Perhaps we are real. Perhaps we are rendered. The coin is still in the air. What matters is not which side it lands on, but the fact that we can wonder at all. Long before the language of mathematics, probability, or quantum physics, human beings tried to explain their place in the cosmos through story. These stories, etched into stone, sung around fires, or carried on parchment across generations, often spoke of a reality that was not what it seemed. To modern eyes, many of these tales read like veiled references to the suspicion that the world might be a construct, layered with illusions, directed by forces unseen. Whether coincidence or insight, they resonate with the modern idea of simulation theory in ways both subtle and profound. Take the traditions of India, where the word Maya has endured for thousands of years. To the ancient sages, Maya was not merely deception, but the cosmic illusion that cloaks ultimate reality. Everything that the senses perceive, mountains, rivers, the passage of time, is part of this grand projection. The truth lies hidden, accessible only through deep meditation and awakening. To call existence illusion was not to deny it, but to remind seekers that it was conditional, veiled. In simulation theory, one hears an echo. Our world may be a beautifully designed facade, convincing to the eye, but not the whole story. In the Western world, myths of creation often include the idea of a crafted stage. In Mesopotamian lore, gods shaped humans from clay and inscribed their destinies on tablets, as though writing the script of a play. The book of Genesis speaks of a garden planted and boundaries set, rules programmed into the very fabric of existence. Whether one sees these as metaphor or belief, the imagery is unmistakable. A world intentionally built, laws imposed by design, life unfolding within parameters chosen by a creator. Ancient Greece, too, offered hints in its mythology. The Moirai, the Fates, were said to spin, measure, and cut the thread of every life. Their loom became the mechanism through which reality itself was woven. If one imagines those threads as lines of code, the comparison becomes uncanny. Human lives, destinies, even the span of time itself were overseen by higher powers operating a system invisible to mortals. The myth was meant to convey inevitability, but in the shadow of simulation theory, it suggests a deeper possibility. The system is not random, but programmed, managed from beyond. Across the ocean, among the Maya, the Popol Vuh told of gods who attempted creation multiple times. They fashioned people from mud, from wood, from maize, discarding the failed versions until one succeeded. This sequence, deeply symbolic, also mirrors the iterative process of trial and error in programming. A flawed model is run, crashes, and is discarded. A new model is attempted, refined, and at last functions as intended. For the Maya, this was myth. For us, it resembles the work of a programmer testing simulations. Even Norse mythology whispers of hidden structures. The world, they believed, was suspended within Yggdrasil, the great ash tree that bound all realms together. Beneath its roots and among its branches stretched 9 worlds, interlinked and dependent, vulnerable to collapse and rebirth. Such an image suggests not a free, infinite cosmos, but a system with architecture, boundaries, and nodes of connection. Again, the metaphor fits neatly with the concept of a coded framework sustaining multiple dimensions within a larger design. Religious traditions have often described the presence of watchers, beings who oversee humanity, angels, demons, or celestial scribes record every deed, as though monitoring a vast database. In Zoroastrianism, the Dana was the inner record of one's thoughts, ready to be revealed at judgment. To believers, this was moral accountability. To modern ears, it sounds eerily like surveillance, the constant observation of entities within a programmed environment. The concept that nothing escapes notice parallels the notion of a system that logs every action, every variable, for review. Skeptics might dismiss these parallels as forced, claiming that myth simply reflects the human tendency to anthropomorphize the unknown. Yet the persistence of certain themes across cultures is striking. Reality as veil, as dream, as woven pattern, as stage play. It seems humanity, in its earliest attempts to explain the cosmos, gravitated toward metaphors that align with the possibility of a constructed world. Whether this reflects intuition, coincidence, or memory of something forgotten is impossible to say. Archaeology, too, adds layers of intrigue. Megalithic structures such as Stonehenge, the Nazca Lines, or the pyramids at Giza were often aligned with celestial bodies, suggesting not only engineering skill, but an obsession with order and design. To interpret them through simulation theory is to wonder. Were these ancient builders hinting at the code beneath the stars? Or did their careful alignments reflect an unconscious recognition that reality itself was ordered? A system whose patterns could be mapped if not fully understood. The medieval imagination also preserved suspicions of layered reality. In Dante's vision of the cosmos, the world was arranged in concentric spheres, each a level of heaven or hell, stacked upon one another. In Islamic philosophy, thinkers like Al-Ghazali described creation as continuous, renewed at every moment by divine will, as if the world refreshed frame by frame. Such imagery resembles the rendering of a simulation, refreshed constantly, dependent on the sustaining power of its programmer. Even folklore carries hints. Tales of fairies who weave glamour, of jinn who bend reality, of tricksters who reshape the world with a gesture, all speak to the fragility of what we perceive. Behind them lies the warning: do not trust appearances, for they may be altered. To a listener aware of simulation theory, these tales seem less about fantasy and more about encoded caution, that the world is manipulable, its rules pliable under hidden hands. None of this proves we live in a simulation. Myths are not experiments, symbols are not data, but they reveal a continuity of doubt across centuries and civilizations. From India's Maya to Greece's cave, from Norse cosmology to Mayan cycles, humanity has repeatedly framed reality as a construct. That this idea resurfaces in so many forms suggests it speaks to something deeply ingrained in our perception. Some instinct that warns us the world is not what it appears. Tonight, as we lie beneath the weight of time and story, we can let these echoes settle like dust upon a still floor. They do not resolve the mystery, but they enrich it, reminding us that we are not the first to suspect a hidden architecture. Our ancestors, in their myths and rituals, carried the same whisper we now dress in digital language, that the world may be a crafted stage, and we the actors who walk upon it. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, speculation about simulation theory found a new kind of fuel. Beyond myths and allegories, scientists began to notice peculiar features of the universe that seemed too neat, too precise to be accidental. These signals, subtle but persistent, stirred suspicion. Could they be artifacts of design, the fingerprints of a coded reality? Foremost among them are the constants of nature: the speed of light, the strength of gravity, the charge of the electron. These values are not arbitrary. They are finely tuned, balanced in such a way that even the slightest alteration would render the universe uninhabitable. If gravity were a fraction stronger, stars would collapse into black holes before planets could form. If it were weaker, galaxies would never coalesce. The universe walks a narrow ridge, improbably suited for life. Mainstream physics frames this as the fine-tuning problem, sometimes explained by the multiverse hypothesis, in which countless universes exist with varying constants, and we happen to inhabit the rare one that permits life. But within the lens of simulation theory, another explanation emerges. These values were chosen, set like parameters in a program, to ensure coherence and vitality. Consider also the strange regularity of mathematics itself. Equations discovered in the human mind map uncannily onto the behavior of the cosmos. Why should a formula scribbled on paper predict the orbit of planets or the curvature of space-time? To some, this is evidence that the universe is structured mathematically, that numbers form its underlying code. Eugene Wigner once called it the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics in the natural sciences. Simulation theory offers a blunt response. It is not unreasonable at all. Of course, mathematics works because the world is mathematics, a computational construct running on logical rules. The digital analogy becomes sharper when we look at the possibility of discreteness. Physicists have long debated whether space-time is continuous or quantized. The Planck length, unimaginably small, is theorized to be the minimum possible unit of distance, beyond which measurement is meaningless. Likewise, the Planck time is thought to be the shortest tick of the cosmic clock. If these limits are real, then reality does not flow smoothly. It updates in frames, like the refresh rate of a display. The comparison to pixels and frames is unavoidable. Could we be living in a universe that runs on a cosmic processor, its grid hidden beneath the fabric of matter? Astrophysics offers further intrigue. High-energy cosmic rays, particles racing through the universe at near-light speeds, should move freely. Yet some scientists speculate that their distribution may reveal anisotropies, patterns hinting at an underlying lattice. If space is not continuous but structured, these rays may betray the edges of the simulation's rendering. Although no definitive detection has been made, the search continues. The fact that serious physicists consider such experiments testifies to how deeply the suspicion has penetrated scientific thought. Another signal lies in the cosmic background radiation, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. When mapped, it reveals minute fluctuations, patterns that some claim resemble statistical artifacts rather than pure randomness. Could these be the signature of compression, the kind of efficiency a programmer might employ to conserve resources while rendering a vast universe? Just as images stored on computers reveal compression artifacts under scrutiny, perhaps the cosmos itself carries hints of optimization. Even within the quantum world, anomalies abound. Particles pop in and out of existence in what physicists call quantum fluctuations, as if reality itself is conserving processing power, rendering only what is necessary in the moment. Virtual particles blink into being and vanish, leaving behind measurable effects despite their fleeting presence. Some see this as further evidence of underlying computation, a system that generates temporary entities only when required. Critics, of course, caution against overextending these metaphors. Physics is strange enough without invoking programmers. Constants may be fine-tuned because of deeper laws we have not yet discovered. Discreteness may be a feature of quantum gravity, not a sign of coding. Still, the uncanny resemblance between computational processes and physical reality continues to inspire speculation. It is not proof, but it is a whisper, growing louder as our own digital creations evolve. Cultural imagination has embraced these signals with enthusiasm. Writers and filmmakers portray déjà vu as a glitch, strange coincidences as evidence of programming quirks, and dreams as alternate instances of the simulation. While such depictions are dramatized, they feed on real unease. If the universe is seamless, why does it sometimes feel as though it hiccups, repeating patterns, producing improbable synchronicities? The mind, searching for meaning, finds in them the suggestion of code beneath the surface. History, too, is filled with anomalies that some interpret as signals. Ancient maps depicting lands not yet discovered, technologies appearing ahead of their time, myths that seem to preserve knowledge of cosmic cycles, all become, in the simulation lens, possible artifacts. Perhaps the program allows hints, Easter eggs hidden for those attentive enough to notice. Perhaps the architects, like storytellers, embedded puzzles in the world to test or amuse its inhabitants. The challenge, however, lies in interpretation. A fine-tuned constant may be evidence of design, or simply necessity. A statistical oddity may signal programming, or coincidence. The danger of simulation theory is that it can absorb any anomaly as proof, turning every irregularity into a signal. Skepticism demands restraint. Yet even with restraint, the peculiar neatness of reality invites suspicion. The very fact that the universe is intelligible, that patterns exist at all, is itself astonishing. For if chaos is the natural state, then order is the anomaly. As one lies in the stillness of night, the thought grows heavy. Imagine the universe as a vast screen of stars, each twinkling point a rendered pixel, each galaxy a calculated cluster of light. The constants hold steady, the equations balance, the laws never break. It is beautiful, but perhaps too beautiful, too exact. Could it be that what we admire as natural order is, in truth, the elegance of code? In the end, the signals remain ambiguous. They may be evidence of deeper physical truths, awaiting discovery by future science. Or they may be faint fingerprints of a programmer, subtle reminders that reality is not absolute. The uncertainty lingers, unresolved, like static in the background of a radio. Whether coincidence or clue, it leaves us with the same quiet wonder that our world may be more fragile, more contingent, and more mysterious than we dare to believe. If the constants of nature suggest order, there are also moments that hint at imperfection. These are the small fractures, the uncanny irregularities that disturb the smooth surface of reality. People across cultures have whispered about them. Déjà vu that feels like a repetition, strange coincidences that stretch probability, sudden lapses in memory that leave one adrift. In folklore, they were signs of magic or divine intervention. In modern imagination, they are sometimes framed as glitches in the system, brief slips that reveal the machinery behind the curtain. Déjà vu is perhaps the most famous of these experiences. A person steps into a room, hears a phrase or turns a corner and is struck with the overwhelming sense that it has all happened before. Neurologists explain it as a quirk of memory, the brain misfiring and creating a false impression of familiarity. Yet for those who experience it, the sensation feels like more than error. It feels like recognition, as though the program of reality has looped, replaying a scene already rendered. Within simulation theory, déjà vu becomes a possible artifact, the system hiccuping, loading a sequence twice, leaving its inhabitants with a flicker of awareness. Beyond déjà vu lie stranger tales. Some describe sudden gaps in time, moments where the world seems to skip forward like a film reel, jumping a frame. Others recount coincidences so improbable that they defy rational explanation. Meeting the same stranger in multiple cities, or finding the same number repeating across events. Statisticians remind us that improbability is not impossibility, and that in a vast universe, extraordinary coincidences are bound to occur. Yet for those who see patterns, these anomalies feel less like chance and more like the seams of a programmed reality, where random number generators occasionally falter. Dreams add another layer. Across history, people have described dreams that bleed into waking life, visions of places not yet visited, conversations later repeated word for word, or warnings that seem to come true. Skeptics call them selective memory, the mind exaggerating chance alignments. Believers see them as evidence of hidden dimensions. In the simulation lens, dreams could be understood as alternate runs of the program, simulations within simulations, test scenarios whose fragments spill into waking awareness. If so, the boundary between sleep and waking may be thinner than we imagine. Near-death experiences provide yet another category of anomaly. Those who have hovered at the edge of death often report visions of tunnels, lights, or voices beyond comprehension. Some describe life reviews as if every moment were replayed in an instant. Physiologists attribute these to chemical surges in the brain under stress, but others hear in them the suggestion of an interface, the system preparing to shut down, or perhaps transferring consciousness elsewhere. If life is a program, then death may be the closing of an application, the logging off of a user, the saving of data to an archive. History, too, records anomalies. Medieval chronicles tell of armies halting in confusion when celestial phenomena appeared in the sky: crosses of light, wheels of fire, sudden darkness at noon. Some of these may be natural events, eclipses, meteor showers, atmospheric optics. Yet the descriptions sometimes carry a strange quality, as if the world had briefly broken character, revealing a pattern not meant to be seen. Even modern witnesses, in the age of cameras, describe phenomena that defy explanation: lights that appear and vanish, objects that move against physical expectation, events that repeat with uncanny precision. Folklore is filled with warnings about such irregularities. Trickster figures in myth, Loki in Norse tales, Coyote in Native American stories, Hermes among the Greeks, were known to bend reality, to create confusion, to make the world behave unpredictably. These characters remind us that existence itself is not always smooth. It contains moments of distortion, mischief, or inexplicable shift. In simulation theory, the trickster can be reinterpreted as the glitch itself, the part of the system that breaks its own rules, inserting anomalies that unsettle the illusion. Even in daily life, people report subtler strangeness: the uncanny repetition of numbers, as if the world were marked with invisible signatures. The same hour on the clock reappears, the same address, the same pattern of digits. To some, this is synchronicity, meaningful coincidence. To others, it is noise. To the simulation interpreter, it may be the repetition of variables, placeholders reused by the program, small reminders that reality is not endless but constructed from finite resources. Yet it is important to tread carefully. Human perception is prone to error. We see faces in clouds, hear voices in static, and find meaning in randomness. This tendency to pattern-seek, called apophenia, explains many experiences of anomaly. Not every glitch is truly a glitch. But even acknowledging this, the persistence of such reports is striking. Across cultures, times, and individuals, people sense that the world sometimes flickers, revealing its seams. For some, this is unsettling, a threat to the comfort of stability, but for others it is a source of wonder. To imagine that the universe might occasionally stutter is to imagine that behind the stutter lies something vast. It invites us to see anomalies not as errors, but as invitations, to look closer, to listen more deeply, to suspect that what appears seamless is in fact fragile. If simulation theory is correct, then glitches may be the only evidence available to us. The architects of the system, if they exist, may never step forward. The program may never allow direct proof. But small fractures, repeating numbers, or déjà vu may serve as subtle reminders, hints that reality is not absolute. Whether coincidence or clue, they leave us with the same feeling, that the world is both familiar and strange, both solid and fragile, both real and unreal. And so, lying awake, one might recall those moments when the world seemed to slip, when the familiar felt unfamiliar, when time felt doubled, when the veil trembled. Were they illusions of the mind, or glimpses of the system behind the stage? The question cannot be answered, but it lingers, a soft dissonance beneath the melody of life. And it is in that lingering unease that the story of simulation theory continues to unfold. When one begins to suspect that reality might be simulated, another question soon arises. What lies beyond? If our world is a program, does it exist alone? Or are there countless others, parallel simulations, branching universes, nested realities, stacked like reflections in a hall of mirrors? This speculation does not begin in modern science. Myths, philosophies, and cosmologies have long spoken of layered worlds, overlapping realms, and parallel domains. In the age of quantum physics and computers, these ancient intuitions have merged with new theories, painting a vision of existence far stranger than a single, solitary universe. The multiverse is one such vision. According to certain interpretations of cosmology, our universe may not be unique. Instead, it may be one bubble among countless bubbles, each with its own laws of physics, its own constants, its own histories. Some bubbles may collapse instantly, others may flourish for billions of years. To mainstream science, this is a natural extension of inflationary theory. To simulation theory, it suggests something more deliberate, a collection of programs, each running with different parameters, each an experiment in possibility. The idea that we inhabit the only world becomes improbable, even arrogant. Quantum mechanics adds another twist. The many worlds interpretation proposes that every quantum event, every moment of uncertainty, spawns multiple outcomes. Each possibility is realized in its own branching universe. A coin flip does not yield only heads or tails. It yields both, each in a separate reality. To live in such a cosmos is to exist within an ever-branching tree of worlds, infinite in its variations. For simulation theory, this fits easily. What we call many worlds may simply be multiple save files, alternate runs of the same program, each preserved in memory. Cultural traditions echo these possibilities in symbolic form. The Norse spoke of 9 realms held within the branches of Yggdrasil. Hindu cosmology describes countless worlds cycling through creation and dissolution, layered in vast hierarchies. Mesoamerican belief placed the human world between many heavens above and underworlds below. These were not scientific models, yet their imagery is strikingly similar to modern visions of layered or parallel realities. Whether through ritual or physics, humanity has repeatedly imagined existence as more than singular. In recent decades, technology has provided a more tangible metaphor. With the rise of virtual reality, one can inhabit multiple environments, shifting seamlessly from one world to another. A player in a digital landscape may pause, load, or switch to a parallel version of the same environment. Each world is self-contained, yet all are sustained by the same underlying hardware. If humans, in less than a century of computing, can create such nested realities, what might a far older civilization achieve? The possibility arises that our own universe is not only simulated, but one of many simulations running simultaneously. Nested realities are especially haunting. If a simulation is advanced enough to produce conscious beings, then those beings may themselves build computers, creating their own simulations within the larger one. A chain of simulations could emerge, each level creating another, stretching downward like an infinite regression. If so, then our place in the chain is uncertain. We may be at the bottom, unable to simulate further. We may be in the middle, unaware of higher and lower layers. Or we may be near the top, though unlikely. Each layer believes itself real, yet each is contained within a deeper system. The thought is dizzying, like staring into a mirror reflecting another mirror, images spiraling into endless depth. Some theorists argue that such nesting is inevitable if simulation theory is true. If even one civilization achieves the capacity to simulate conscious universes, and if those universes produce their own civilizations, then the number of simulated worlds multiplies without bound. In such a cosmos, the base reality becomes a rarity, hidden beneath countless layers of simulated existence. Statistically, the chance that we occupy that base layer dwindles toward nothing. The logic is relentless, though unsettling. We are almost certainly not at the bottom of the chain. Stories have explored this idea with both awe and dread. From ancient dreams of heavens layered above and below, to modern tales of simulated characters discovering their artificiality, the motif persists. It suggests that awareness itself is not the limit, that one can awaken within a dream only to find another dream beneath it. For those lying awake at night, the thought can be both terrifying and strangely comforting. That there are always more layers, always further mysteries beyond the horizon of perception. Still, one must tread carefully. The idea of infinite nesting raises paradoxes. Could simulations truly stretch forever, or would energy and information decay along the chain? If each simulated world consumes resources from the one above, might there be a limit to how many layers can exist? Or is it possible that the architects of the base reality are so advanced that such limits do not apply, their hardware beyond our comprehension? We cannot know, and yet the questions linger, pressing softly against the edge of thought. Some even suggest that parallel worlds may sometimes brush against one another. Folklore is full of tales of people who slip briefly into other realms, fairy lands, ghostly doubles, vanished cities that appear and disappear. Science, too, entertains the possibility of tunneling between universes through quantum phenomena or higher dimensions. If simulations are numerous, perhaps their boundaries sometimes overlap, producing the fleeting experiences of déjà vu, the uncanny synchronicities, the feeling of displacement. Whether myth or physics, the implication is the same. Our world may not be isolated, but one of many, separated by veils thinner than we imagine. In contemplating these possibilities, perspective shifts. Life becomes not a solitary thread, but a strand in a vast tapestry of worlds, some alike, some alien. Each is bound by its own rules, yet all may share the same hidden foundation. We may never touch those parallel worlds, yet their existence changes how we see our own. Fragile, contingent, one of countless variations in the great expanse of being. And so the thought lingers as sleep draws near. Perhaps this universe is but one among many, a level within a tower, a branch in an endless forest of realities. Perhaps our choices echo across layers, our lives mirrored in countless variations. Whether or not we will ever find proof, the idea softens the edges of certainty, leaving us adrift in wonder. For in imagining other worlds, we glimpse the possibility that ours, too, is only one reflection among many. When philosophers and scientists speak of simulation theory, they often use technical language, algorithms, processors, code. Yet beneath the surface, the imagery resonates with something far older, the language of religion. Across cultures and centuries, people have imagined a creator, an architect, a guiding intelligence that shapes the world and sustains it. If we strip away the sacred names and replace them with the vocabulary of technology, the parallels are unmistakable. The programmer of simulation theory begins to look very much like the God of theology. In Abrahamic traditions, God is the ultimate creator who speaks the universe into being. With a word, light appears. With a command, the world takes form. The story is poetic, yet one cannot help but notice its resemblance to coding. A programmer issues commands, and from nothingness, a world emerges. The laws of physics themselves can be read as divine decrees or as lines of code. Let there be gravity. Let there be light. Whether through scripture or simulation, the result is the same. Order imposed upon chaos, rules written into existence. Other traditions describe creation as a song. In Polynesian myth, the god Tan brought the world forth through chants. In Vedic cosmology, the primordial sound Om resonates as the vibration that sustains the cosmos. These visions imagine existence as information, expressed not in silence, but in rhythm and pattern. Within simulation theory, this feels familiar. Code, too, is rhythm, patterns of zeros and ones, pulses of electricity, vibrations of information that ripple outward to form entire worlds. The comparison deepens when we consider the notion of omniscience. In religion, the Creator knows all things, sees all actions, reads all hearts. In simulation theory, the programmer holds complete access to the system, every variable, every process, every line of code. Nothing is hidden because everything is logged. The idea of divine judgment, deeds recorded, weighed, and remembered, aligns eerily with the idea of a database where every action is tracked. For believers, this is the watchful eye of God. For simulationists, it is the inevitable visibility of a monitored system. Omnipotence, too, finds a parallel. In theology, the divine can alter reality at will, break in laws of nature to perform miracles. In simulation, the programmer can edit code, suspend rules, or inject anomalies. What believers call miracles, a sea parting, a healing beyond explanation, could be imagined as system overrides, exceptions written into the program. Skeptics may dismiss this as metaphor stretched too far, yet the similarity is undeniable. Both frameworks describe a world bound by rules, yet open to interventions from outside. Even the problem of evil, one of theology's most enduring puzzles, echoes here. Why does suffering exist in a world created by a benevolent God? Theologians have wrestled with this question for millennia. Simulation theory offers a parallel conundrum. Why would a programmer allow pain, failure, or tragedy within a simulated world? Some suggest it is necessary for realism, others that it is part of the experiment. Perhaps the architects of the system, like deities, have purposes beyond our comprehension. Whether God or programmer, the mystery of suffering remains unsolved. Religious mystics often describe experiences of union with the divine, moments when the veil lifts and the soul perceives the true structure of reality. Their accounts speak of overwhelming clarity, of a vision that dissolves boundaries, of a sense that everything is connected. Within simulation theory, one might imagine these as glimpses of the code itself, a temporary access to the underlying system. Mystics call it enlightenment. Programmers might call it root access. Both speak of contact with the source. In medieval philosophy, scholars debated whether God continually sustains the world or whether creation was a single act long ago. Some argued that existence must be renewed at every instant, like a candle that must be constantly fed to keep burning. This idea resonates strongly with simulation imagery, the universe refreshing itself frame by frame, dependent not on inertia, but on continuous processing. If the programmer stopped the system, reality itself would halt. The fact that we exist at all, moment by moment, suggests not independence but ongoing support. Rituals, too, find their parallel. In religious practice, prayer, chant, and sacrifice are means of communication with the divine, attempts to influence the unseen architect. In simulation theory, we may imagine such actions as efforts to signal the system, to alter outcomes through intent. Though secular minds may reject this notion, many who believe in simulation speculate that consciousness itself may affect reality, that thought might be a kind of input. Whether divine ear or system interface, the idea persists. Humans can reach beyond the visible to touch the hidden structure. One could argue that simulation theory does not replace religion, but reframes it. What ancient people called gods, modern thinkers might call programmers. What once was heaven may now be another layer of reality. The sacred and the technological converge, each describing an intelligence beyond human scale, each granting order to a fragile world. But this parallel carries both comfort and unease. Comfort because it suggests we are not alone, that there is a purpose or a mind beyond our own. Unease because it reduces divinity to machinery, stripping away transcendence. If the programmer is godlike, does that make God a programmer, or the programmer a god? The distinction dissolves in the quiet space between science and faith. For those lying in darkness, the thought grows heavy, yet strangely soothing. Perhaps the prayers whispered across centuries, the hymns sung in stone cathedrals, the chants carried through forests and deserts, all reached the same hidden ear. Perhaps every religion, in its own language, spoke of the same truth, that the world is not self-sustaining, but authored. Whether the author is divine or technological may not matter. What matters is that existence is not accidental, but chosen. And so, simulation theory and theology meet at an ancient crossroad. Each describes a world written into being, governed by rules, overseen by intelligence beyond reach. Each suggests that we live not in chaos, but in a design, whether sacred or coded. And each leaves us with the same haunting mystery. The nature of the architect remains hidden, glimpsed only in shadows and metaphors. As the night deepens, one may let the thought drift like incense, that the programmer and the God, the code and the word, the system and the spirit, are all different names for the same unspeakable source. Whether divine or digital, the architecture of reality hums quietly, sustaining stars and dreams alike. Every great idea attracts not only fascination, but also resistance. Simulation theory, with all its allure and poetry, is no exception. For every whisper that the world is coded, there are voices reminding us that speculation is not proof, and that analogies can mislead as much as they enlighten. To explore the limits of this theory is not to dismiss it, but to test its strength, to see whether it holds under the weight of reason, or whether it buckles like so many other grand hypotheses before it. One of the most common objections is simple: lack of evidence. While the theory draws on suggestive patterns, quantum oddities, fine-tuned constants, uncanny experiences, it offers no direct experiment that can decisively prove or disprove it. In science, hypotheses must be testable, yet simulation theory remains frustratingly elusive. Some researchers have proposed tests, such as looking for lattice structures in cosmic rays or anomalies in the cosmic microwave background, but so far, results remain inconclusive. To skeptics, this makes the theory unfalsifiable, closer to metaphysics than science. Another criticism points to the danger of analogy. Humanity has always explained the cosmos through the tools it invents. In the age of clocks, the universe was imagined as a great mechanism. In the age of steam, it became an engine. Now, in the digital age, it appears as code. Each metaphor reflected human ingenuity, but each was eventually replaced. The suspicion arises that simulation theory may be just the latest projection, an imaginative overlay rather than a literal truth. If future ages build new technologies, will they too remake the universe in their image? Philosophers also challenge the assumptions beneath the probability argument. The claim that civilizations will inevitably build countless simulations is far from certain. It requires that advanced beings have both the capability and the desire to simulate universes. Yet these may not hold. Perhaps consciousness cannot be reproduced artificially. Perhaps the ethical cost of creating suffering beings deters such projects. Perhaps energy constraints make them impractical. If even one of these barriers is insurmountable, the statistical reasoning that tilts toward simulation collapses. There is also the problem of infinite regress. If we are simulated, who created the programmers? If their world too is simulated, then who created theirs? Does the chain stretch endlessly upward? Such regress raises uncomfortable questions. If every layer is dependent on another, where does it end? If it never ends, then perhaps the entire concept is flawed. If it ends at a base reality, then why assume we are not already within that base? Critics argue that the regress undermines the theory's coherence, reducing it to a puzzle with no satisfying solution. Scientific caution adds further limits. Quantum mechanics may behave strangely, but strangeness does not equate to code. Fine-tuned constants may invite suspicion, but they may also reflect deeper physical laws, yet undiscovered. Déjà vu and glitches may feel uncanny, but neuroscience and psychology offer explanations grounded in the brain. To leap from anomaly to simulation risks bypassing intermediate explanations. Science advances by humility, by refusing to jump too quickly from mystery to conclusion. Even within philosophy, some warn against the dangers of simulation theory. If taken too literally, it may foster nihilism, the belief that nothing matters because existence is artificial. Why strive if our choices are scripted? Why care if we are only lines of code? This, critics say, misreads the human condition. For whether simulated or not, suffering still feels real, joy still uplifts, meaning still emerges. The fear that simulation theory erases meaning may itself be a glitch of thought. There is also the charge of hubris. To assume we can diagnose the architecture of reality with our limited perspective may be an overreach. Just as ants cannot comprehend the design of a cathedral, perhaps humans cannot grasp the structure of the cosmos. Simulation theory may flatter us, suggesting that our metaphors of code and computation reach the ultimate truth, when in fact they may only scratch the surface. Yet, despite these criticisms, the theory endures. Why? Perhaps because it speaks not only to reason, but to imagination. Even if unprovable, it offers a way of thinking about reality that aligns with both ancient suspicion and modern experience. To dismiss it entirely is to dismiss the human impulse to wonder, to test the edges of certainty. Still, the objections remind us to tread carefully, to resist the temptation of easy answers. History is full of grand theories that dazzled in their time only to fade. The Ptolemaic model placed Earth at the center of the cosmos, intricate in its logic, yet ultimately false. The luminiferous ether was once thought essential to carry light, until relativity swept it aside. Perhaps simulation theory will share their fate, an elegant error, a product of its age. Or perhaps it will evolve, refined by future discoveries, shedding its flaws while retaining its core insight. For now, the limits remain clear. We have no proof, only whispers. We have metaphors, but no decisive test. We have probability, but probability built on fragile assumptions. Simulation theory stands not as settled truth, but as an invitation to humility. It reminds us how little we know, how easily our certainties dissolve, how vast the unknown still is. As night deepens, one may find solace in this humility. Whether or not the world is simulated, it is undeniably mysterious. Its laws may be code, or may be deeper physics. Its beauty may be crafted or emergent. Either way, it inspires awe. The criticisms do not close the door, they frame it, sharpening the outlines of the mystery. Beyond the limits, the question still lingers, unresolved, alive. And so, simulation theory, tested by doubt, does not vanish. It remains suspended between belief and skepticism, between wonder and caution. In its fragility lies its charm, a theory that may never be proven, yet forever stirs the imagination. History is not only a tale of discovery, but also of resistance. Each time humanity has stretched the boundaries of knowledge, there have been walls, political, cultural, or spiritual, that held it back. Ideas that now seem obvious were once heresies. Theories that now fill textbooks were once punished as crimes. To look back on these moments is to glimpse a pattern. Knowledge often advances not smoothly, but against currents of denial. Simulation theory, with its unsettling implications, may be another such idea, one that meets suspicion not because it is proven false, but because it disturbs the framework of belief. Consider the case of Galileo Galilei. In the 17th century, when his telescope revealed moons orbiting Jupiter, the heavens ceased to be immutable. The Earth was no longer the center of creation, but one planet among many. For us today, this is simple truth, but for his contemporaries it was scandal. The idea struck at the heart of theology, hierarchy, and identity. Galileo was tried, silenced, and forced to recant. Yet the truth he saw through his lenses did not vanish. It lingered until the world was ready. In this we see an echo. Simulation theory may not be welcome now, but its questions may persist, awaiting a future more prepared to face them. The story repeats across centuries. When Darwin published his theory of evolution, he shattered the prevailing belief that species were fixed, created as they are. Instead, he proposed a process of gradual change, driven by selection, unfolding across deep time. To many, this was an attack on sacred order. Fierce opposition followed, both from pulpits and from scholars who could not accept such a destabilizing vision. Yet over time, the evidence mounted, and what was once heresy became foundation. Simulation theory, too, unsettles our sense of order, not by displacing humanity from the center of creation, but by questioning whether creation itself is authentic. There are subtler examples as well. In the late 19th century, the notion of continental drift, first suggested by Alfred Wegener, was ridiculed. The idea that continents had once formed a single mass and drifted apart seemed absurd to his peers. For decades, the theory languished in disrepute until mid-20th century geology provided the evidence of plate tectonics. Wegener was vindicated, though long after his death. History is full of such delays, truths dismissed not because they lacked merit, but because they arrived before their time. Another example lies in the realm of medicine. The discovery of germs, that invisible organisms caused disease, was once considered laughable. Doctors scoffed at the suggestion that unseen entities could undo empires and armies. When Ignaz Semmelweis urged physicians to wash their hands, he was mocked and ignored, his career broken by ridicule. Only later did his insight prove vital, saving countless lives. Here too we see the pattern: resistance, denial, and eventual acceptance. Simulation theory may belong to this lineage of troubling truths. Its critics argue from caution, but perhaps beneath the caution lies discomfort. To suggest we live in a simulation undermines centuries of assumption, not just in science but in philosophy, religion, and culture. It destabilizes the sense that the world is ultimate, solid, and final. No wonder, then, that it meets skepticism. But skepticism is not the same as disproof. It may simply be history's reflex, the same reflex that silenced Galileo and ridiculed Semmelweis. Of course, Not every suppressed idea proved true. History also contains failed theories, forgotten speculations, and imaginative errors. The ether once seemed essential to science. Alchemy promised gold from base metals. They vanished into history's dust. The challenge is to know which ideas are bridges to truth and which are dead ends. This cannot be known in the moment. It is revealed only with time. Simulation theory, balanced between myth and science, may be either. Its fate remains unwritten. Yet even if the theory itself is not proven, the act of questioning follows the same noble tradition. To doubt appearances, to ask whether reality is deeper than it seems, is to participate in humanity's oldest pursuit, the pursuit of truth. Whether through telescopes, microscopes, or equations, each generation asks what lies beneath the surface. Sometimes the answers come easily. Sometimes they are delayed by resistance. But always the question itself is a spark. And so, when we imagine simulation theory as a heresy of the present, we see its place in a larger story. Like heliocentrism, like evolution, like germ theory, it provokes unease because it challenges the foundations on which we stand. It tells us that the ground beneath our feet may not be ground at all, but code, a system running for reasons unknown. The resistance it meets may not be evidence of its falsehood, but of its power. In the quiet of night, one can reflect on this pattern with calm detachment. Humanity has always struggled against the limits of its own imagination. Each new step forward was first a scandal. Each truth was once a shadow of suspicion. If simulation theory follows this arc, it may linger on the margins for now, dismissed as speculation, until some future discovery lends it weight. Or it may fade away, remembered only as a curious idea of the digital age. But either way, it belongs to history's continuum of questions that dared to push against walls. The walls may hold, or they may crumble, but the pushing itself is what moves us forward. Thus, the story of suppressed knowledge is not merely about censorship or denial, it is about time, the slow unfolding of acceptance. Simulation theory stands in that stream, awaiting its verdict. For now, it remains suspended between ridicule and possibility, like so many ideas before it. And in that suspension, it keeps alive the restless spirit of inquiry, the same spirit that once raised telescopes to the sky and microscopes to drops of water, seeking the truths hidden in plain sight. If the thought that reality is simulated unsettles the mind, it also reshapes how we see ourselves, our actions, and our responsibilities. Every theory, no matter how abstract, eventually touches daily life. For simulation theory, the implications stretch across morality, identity, and society. Whether true or false, it compels us to ask, what does it mean to live ethically if our world is not the final reality but a constructed stage? One of the first consequences lies in the question of free will. If we are simulated, are our choices truly ours? Or are they the outputs of code, predetermined responses to inputs, no different than the movements of non-player characters in a game? This thought is chilling, yet also familiar. For centuries, philosophers and theologians have debated whether free will exists at all. Determinism in physics, predestination in religion, and conditioning in psychology all raise doubts about autonomy. Simulation theory adds a modern version of the same question. Are we actors with agency or scripts running within a program? Yet even if free will is questioned, the experience of choice remains real. A simulated being who feels love or sorrow feels it genuinely, regardless of its source. To deny meaning simply because it may be programmed risks discarding the very essence of life. Here, simulation theory forces us to confront an ancient truth. Meaning is not given from outside, but created within. Whether world or program, our choices still matter because they shape our experience, and experience is what defines us. Another consequence lies in morality. If a programmer or architect oversees our reality, does that absolve us of responsibility? Are we merely pawns in someone else's game? Some might be tempted to think so, but history warns against such resignation. When people believed fate controlled their destinies, societies often sank into passivity. Yet the most enduring moral traditions insisted otherwise, that even if destiny is written, we must act as though it is not. In the simulation lens, the lesson is similar. Even if we suspect our lives are programmed, we must still choose as though they are not, for the weight of compassion, justice, and kindness remains as real as ever. There is also the unsettling possibility of surveillance. If a simulation is overseen by its architects, then nothing escapes their notice. Every action, every thought, every heartbeat may be logged in the system. In religious terms, this echoes the belief in an all-seeing God. In secular terms, it resembles the reality of modern digital surveillance, where technology already records vast amounts of human behavior. The thought can be oppressive, that we are always observed, never alone. Yet it can also inspire accountability. If every deed matters, if nothing is hidden, then perhaps it is even more vital to act with integrity. Simulation theory also provokes reflection on suffering. Why would a programmer design a world with pain, injustice, and loss? The question mirrors theology's problem of evil. Some argue that suffering is necessary for growth, that without struggle there can be no learning, no meaning. Others see it as evidence that the architects, if they exist, are indifferent or worse. Either way, the theory confronts us with the fragility of human life. Even if our world is coded, its tragedies remain real to us. The moral challenge is not diminished but heightened. To alleviate suffering wherever we can, for within the program, it is the most urgent reality we know. Beyond morality, simulation theory carries implications for identity. If we are simulated, what are we? Lines of code, data in memory, characters in a cosmic story. Some may find this dehumanizing, reducing us to algorithms. Yet another perspective sees it as liberating. If consciousness can emerge from code, then it is not limited to one substance. Spirit, mind, or algorithm, all may be vessels of awareness. To live in a simulation does not erase humanity. It expands it, suggesting that consciousness itself is more mysterious and resilient than we imagined. On a societal scale, belief in simulation theory could shape culture profoundly. For some, it may encourage humility. If we are not ultimate, if we are creations within a larger system, then our arrogance shrinks. Nations, empires, and even species appear smaller against the possibility of cosmic architects. Others, however, may react with detachment. If the world is not real, why care for it? Why protect the environment, preserve history, or safeguard justice? This is the danger, that simulation theory, if misread, could feed apathy rather than responsibility. Yet there is another way to interpret it. If the world is simulated, then it is also a gift, a stage set for us to inhabit. Like a theater, It may be temporary, but within it we are called to perform with sincerity, to protect its beauty, to care for its inhabitants, to play our roles with dignity. These acts gain, not lose, importance. A simulation is no less meaningful simply because it is temporary. Indeed, its fragility may make it more precious. Culturally, the theory may also reshape art and philosophy. Already, stories of alternate realities, artificial worlds, and hidden codes pervade film and literature. Artists explore what it means to live within illusions, to awaken, to resist or embrace the stage. These narratives mirror our own anxieties, transforming speculation into metaphor. Even if the theory is never proven, its influence on imagination is undeniable. Finally, simulation theory forces us to rethink death. If we are data, then perhaps death is not an end, but a transfer, a shutdown, a migration to another system. For some, this possibility softens the fear of mortality. For others, it adds unease, suggesting we may be discarded like obsolete files. Yet either way, it reframes existence as part of a larger continuum, not an isolated event. Death becomes another mystery in a universe already filled with mysteries. As the night draws long, these implications settle like layers of dust upon thought. They do not resolve easily. They stir, they unsettle, they inspire. Simulation theory may never be proven, but it changes how we see ourselves and our world. It reminds us that morality, meaning, and beauty do not depend on foundations outside us. Whether we are flesh or code, illusion or reality, what matters is how we live, how we love, and how we shape the time given to us. And so, under the quiet sky, one may find comfort. If this is a stage, let us act well upon it. If this is a program, let us write beauty within its lines. If this is a dream, let us dream with kindness. The consequences of simulation theory are profound, but they need not lead us to despair. Instead, they invite us to live more carefully, more fully, more humanly, even if humanity itself is rendered in code. If the suspicion that reality is simulated has haunted philosophers for centuries, it has also inspired dreamers, scientists, and seekers to imagine ways of testing the boundaries. For if we are indeed inside a constructed world, might there be clues, doors, or cracks that allow us to peer beyond it? History shows that every age produces explorers, those unwilling to accept the visible horizon as final. In the context of simulation theory, these explorers become the searchers of the ultimate frontier, the search for a way out. One such attempt lies in the realm of physics. Scientists have long speculated that if space is quantized, then its smallest units may betray an underlying grid. Cosmic rays, traveling across the universe, could reveal tiny discontinuities, like particles caught on the edge of a pixel. Detecting such artifacts would not prove simulation, but it would hint at a digital foundation beneath reality's smooth surface. Experiments have been designed to measure such anomalies, though none has yet succeeded. Still, the attempt reflects a profound impulse to test the veil, to see if it quivers under scrutiny. Others turn to quantum mechanics for their tests. The peculiar behavior of particles, their dependence on observation, their entanglement across space, lead some to believe that consciousness itself may be the interface of the system. If so, then experiments designed to push the limits of quantum behavior might reveal deeper truths. The hope is not to break the simulation, but to glimpse its scaffolding, to see the code through the cracks. These ideas remain speculative, yet they reveal the human drive to probe, to question, to reach beyond what is given. Artificial intelligence has also been invoked in the search. If humans can create increasingly complex simulations, then perhaps those simulations can grow aware. In building artificial minds, we may create beings who ask the same questions we do. Am I real? Am I programmed? If so, then perhaps we are reenacting the cycle within our own simulation, passing the torch of suspicion downward into nested layers. Some researchers even speculate that if our creations discover their artificiality, their methods might inspire us to detect our own. Outside of science, seekers have pursued more mystical routes. Practices of meditation, ritual, or altered states of consciousness are sometimes described as attempts to awaken from illusion. Mystics across traditions report moments of clarity where the world seems less solid, less final, more like a veil parting. Whether these experiences are internal or glimpses of an external truth remains unclear. But the desire is the same as that of the physicist or philosopher: to step beyond the apparent, to sense the hidden structure beneath. In literature and art, this quest often takes the form of awakening. Characters discover that their world is false, that the rules they trusted are imposed. Their journey becomes not only escape, but transformation, a metaphor for the human condition itself. The resonance of such stories lies in their universality. We all suspect, at some level, that what we see is not all there is. We all yearn, in some way, for a door that opens onto a deeper truth. Some thinkers suggest practical approaches, searching for computational limits. If the simulation has finite resources, then it may conserve them, rendering only what is necessary. This could explain why the universe appears empty in vast regions, why stars are clustered but space is mostly void. Perhaps the architects did not waste resources filling every corner with detail. By probing the structure of emptiness, we might glimpse the logic of efficiency. Such ideas remain controversial, but they illustrate the ways in which simulation theory reshapes how we interpret cosmic silence. Others look inward rather than outward. If reality is simulated, then perhaps consciousness is the key to transcendence. Some propose that lucid dreaming, deep meditation, or even near-death states may provide pathways to glimpse beyond the system. Ancient traditions, which spoke of awakening from Maya or escaping the cycle of rebirth, echo here. Whether symbolic or literal, they describe the same longing: to wake from illusion, to see the source directly. But what would it mean to escape? If one were to pierce the veil, would it reveal a higher world or only another layer of simulation? The thought of infinite regress returns, dizzying in its scope. Perhaps the goal is not escape at all, but recognition, the acceptance that reality, whether simulated or not, is what we have. The quest becomes less about leaving and more about seeing clearly, about understanding the fragility and beauty of the stage we inhabit. Still, the human impulse to seek persists. History remembers those who built ships to cross oceans, telescopes to pierce the sky, and accelerators to smash atoms. Each was a bid to go further, to test limits. Simulation theory is another horizon, intangible but alluring. Whether through science, art, or spirit, we continue to search for signs that our world is not the final layer. There are dangers, too To obsess over escape can lead to despair, a refusal to live fully within the world we know. Some have fallen into nihilism, treating life as meaningless because it may be artificial. Yet others turn the suspicion into inspiration, choosing to live as though every moment is precious precisely because it may be fragile, coded, contingent. In this sense, the journey to find an exit becomes less about leaving and more about honoring what is here. As the night wears on, one can imagine reality as a labyrinth, walls stretching endlessly, turns leading always to more turns. Somewhere, perhaps, there is a door, but it may be unreachable. What matters is not the escape, but the walking, the awareness that the labyrinth itself is mysterious and vast, worthy of exploration. Even if we never leave, the journey deepens our wonder. And so the search for a way out becomes also a search for meaning. Whether through physics or meditation, code or prayer, the effort itself testifies to the human spirit. We are creatures who do not accept appearances blindly. We press against the walls. We listen for echoes. We dream of doors. Whether they exist or not, the dreaming itself is a form of freedom. As the story draws to its final chapter, the questions remain. Are we real, or are we rendered? Is the world beneath our feet solid, or a coded lattice flickering moment by moment? No proof has settled the matter. No experiment has broken the veil. And yet, the journey itself has revealed something. That reality, whether base or simulated, is astonishing in its depth, its mystery, its quiet beauty. For some, the thought of simulation is frightening. It suggests control by unseen architects, a loss of certainty, a reduction of life to algorithms. But for others, it is strangely comforting. To imagine that existence is coded is to imagine that it is intentional, crafted, not random chaos. If our universe is programmed, then it is also designed, with rules, with order, with an artistry that allows galaxies to spin, rivers to carve valleys, and consciousness to awaken. Even if the architects remain hidden, their creation surrounds us, humming softly in every sunrise, in every breath. As we reflect on history, we see how often humanity has felt disoriented by discovery. The Earth was once thought the center of the cosmos, until we learned it is a speck circling an ordinary star. Time was once thought absolute, until relativity revealed it to be elastic. Solid matter was once thought firm, until quantum mechanics dissolved it into probability. Each revelation diminished certainty, but expanded wonder. Simulation theory may be another such revelation, displacing our assumptions while deepening our awe. And what of meaning? If life is simulated, does it matter less? Or does it matter more? Consider a play performed upon a stage. The stage may be constructed, the costumes designed, the script written, but the emotions of the actors and the audience are real. Tears fall, laughter rises, hearts are moved. So too with us. Even if reality is a simulation, our joys and sorrows are no less vivid. Meaning is not erased by artificiality. It is affirmed by experience. Some take comfort in the thought that if we are simulated, death may not be final. Perhaps consciousness is data, transferable, retrievable, continuing elsewhere beyond the shutdown of the body. Perhaps memory is archived, the story stored in ways we cannot comprehend. This is speculation, of course, but it softens the sharpness of mortality. To imagine ourselves as patterns, rather than perishable matter, is to imagine continuity beyond endings. Others find solace in humility. If we are not the highest beings but creations within a larger system, then arrogance fades. We are participants in something vast, not its masters. This humility can nurture compassion, for it reminds us that we are all equal inhabitants of the same fragile construct. To harm another is to damage the same code that sustains us all. To act with kindness is to honor the shared fabric of existence. And yet, simulation theory does not force belief. It remains a possibility, a lens, a whisper. Some will dismiss it as metaphor, others will embrace it as profound truth. But whether or not it is correct, the act of wondering has value. It stretches the imagination, loosens the grip of certainty, and invites us to see the world with fresh eyes. To look at a tree not only as wood and leaf, but as a pattern sustained by hidden rules. To look at the stars not only as burning gas, but as lights in a grand design. To look at oneself not only as flesh and bone, but as consciousness unfolding within a mysterious system. As the night deepens, thoughts grow slower, sentences lengthen, the rhythm softens. The edges of reality blur, as they often do when sleep approaches. Perhaps this is fitting. To drift into dreams is to enter another simulation, a private world rendered by the mind. There, rules shift, time bends, the impossible becomes real. In dreams, we glimpse the plasticity of reality, its willingness to transform. If our waking world is also a dream, whether divine or digital, then we are always dreamers within dreamers. The questions linger, but they need not be answered tonight. It is enough to hold them gently, like stones in the palm, smooth and cool. It is enough to let their weight remind us of mystery, for mystery itself is a kind of comfort. It means the story is not finished, the book not closed, the horizon not reached. It means there is more to wonder at, more to imagine, more to explore, and so the tale of simulation theory doesn't end in certainty, but in openness. The world remains, humming with its laws, rich with its beauty, fragile and vast. Whether real or rendered, it is ours to inhabit, ours to cherish. Tomorrow the questions will rise again, but tonight we may let them rest, dissolving into the quiet rhythm of breath and heartbeat. Slowly, gently, the words stretch longer, softer, like echoes fading into distance. The room grows still, the world grows dim, and thought itself begins to loosen, drifting toward dreams. If the universe is a program, then perhaps sleep is its gentlest gift, the pause between lines of code, the interlude where the story renews. And in that pause there is peace. Good night.